Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Real Science of Sport podcast. I'm Ross Tucker, and joining me, as we have been doing for the last 8 days of Tokyo, is Gareth Davies, and we are bringing you some recaps and insights and analysis from the Tokyo World Championships, which have reached their second Saturday, second last day, and 2 track gold medals were handed out today. There was also Carnage in the relay qualifiers, so we'll bring you some insights on that, as well as a couple of field event results. Gareth, I must say, as much as I love watching these, I'm very much looking forward to not having to cover them every day. I'm pretty tired.
It's difficult. There's so much going on, especially with the relays were quite frantic today. They were fast and furious, not just the racing, but the way they were coming at us. And there was so much going on. I was like frantically scribbling notes down and thinking I'm going to have forgotten this by the time we record, because of course we've got some big races in between.
Yeah. Speaking of relays, we'll get to this, but like watching the 4x1s, it struck me that this is one of the biggest opportunities to cover the sport differently, because you just don't know what's happening. It's all chaos, and you sort of, every time there's a changeover, you have to look backwards to see if there's been a mistake and forwards to see who's winning the race. It's really difficult to follow. Anyway, we'll get to that. Relays we'll park for later. Where shall we begin? Shall we begin in order that the gold track medals were handed out tonight? And we said that the most anticipated event of the Tokyo World Champs was happening, and it was the men's 8. No, I'm joking. We actually picked the women's 5,000 to be the event to watch, and I have to say, I was extremely underwhelmed at what people try to do in this race. I can't explain how people expect a different result when they keep doing the same thing against Beatrice Chebet.
It was an odd one because once again the pace was really slow, and the two on front for virtually the entire race were the two Americans, especially Shelby Houlihan. Looking at the splits here, she pretty much led for the entire race up to about 4,200 meters, and the pace, as we say, was really slow. Um, I think it was a 67 first lap, and it never really improved, did it, all the way around? You were,
77, no, because the first kilometer, and I'll put those splits up on screen for those of you who are watching this, but we'll read them out as we have been doing. Like, the first K is 3:17. I mean, it's 3:17.91 for Beatrice Chebet, who admittedly was running in 8th or 9th in the pack. And that's jogging for the caliber of athletes who are in this race. And at that point, and I think Paula Radcliffe felt the same, it looks like if they keep going at this pace, Kipyegon is going to be able to hit the last 2 kilometers really hard. It looks perfectly set up to be in her favor. And I guess with the benefit of hindsight and to be charitable to the tactics, the athletes are potentially quite tired. Most of the athletes in this race have doubled up. Kipyegon, Batocletti, Tsegai, either in a 1500 or a 10K, whereas Houlihan, for instance, hasn't done that. So there's that, plus the conditions on the night. It's been hot and humid in Tokyo all week, so maybe you can forgive them for being a little bit more conservative than they normally would. But I just find it, given what we spoke about yesterday, inexplicable that you would know Chebet to be able to finish the way that she does and let the pace go so slowly all the way. Because at 2K and 3K, it was slow enough that you're thinking Kipyegon can run this like a mile. And that's the way she can possibly beat Chebet. And she just didn't do it. And in the end, it comes down to the last 400 meters. And I mean, Chebet's won a 5, a 10, and a 10 in Olympic and world titles in exactly the same way. She wins every Diamond League race. Well, not every one, because sometimes she breaks world records. But every close tactical Diamond League the same way. And they let her do it again today. And so Chebet wins this title from Kipyegon, with Batocletti getting a bronze to go with her 10K silver.
Because I was making notes, and with 1,500 to go, and I'm thinking, right, okay, 1,500. Now we're into Kipyegon's territory. It had taken them 10:48 to get there. So at that point, I was thinking, is she going to launch Kipyegon? But she didn't. And we still had, with 2 laps to go, we had a really big pack. And there were elbows going, and they were starting to jostle. And the biggest threat at that point then to Chebet became tripping over somebody. Because at one point she started to get herself boxed on the inside, and she sort of maneuvered herself into the outside. And there was a bit of a moment there where I thought, oh God, she's going to go over. But then Kipyegon and her just sort of started to vie for the front. But you knew that you'd said all the way along, and I knew that the kick was going to come at some point, because you said if it comes down to that last 200-300 meters, there's only going to be one winner. And so it turned out, there was.
Yeah. And I mean, Kipyegon would have wanted a race slow enough that she could leverage her biggest asset, which is the ability to run. And I've got no doubt that this is the case. A better 800, a better 1,000, a better 1,500 than Chebet. The moment it goes longer than that, I put my money on Chebet. We even spoke in the build-up. I reckon the crossover point between those two is probably somewhere between 2 and 2.5 kilometers. So it looked really good for Kipyegon. But again, I mean, she's got to be tired. They've been racing since May. Kipyegon was used as a marketing tool for Nike midway through the season. Maybe it's just at the end, no one's got the appetite to try and risk a podium spot in order to beat Chebet. But you're not beating Chebet by sitting for 4,600 meters. And Houlihan, it got faster, right? It was 3:17, 2:58, 2:56, I think. Maybe I've skipped one there. 3:02, 2:58, 2:56. So a little bit of a build. But then the last kilometers, 2:38, exactly the same as we saw in the 10K. I'll put those splits back up and just read to you how Chebet wins this. She runs the last lap in 57.6, if my maths is correct here. And her last... from 4.8 to 4.9, so from 200 to go, she runs 14.42. Kipyegon 14.45, because she's just shadowing her, she's tracking her, she's hunting now, And then in the final 100, Chebet runs 13.44. Kipyegon is the second fastest with Bicicletti. They run 14.2. So it's 0.8 seconds over 100K. Chebet is 1 second better than the next best athletes in the last 100 meters. And it's been that way for 18 months. It's just inexplicable to me that you would let her do what she wants to do.
The only 100-meter split out the entire race that Chebet was quickest on was the last one.
Perfect for her, no?
Perfect. No. But you got to hand it to Bicicletti as well, winning another bronze.
Yeah, exactly. She knows her strength. I was almost surprised she didn't come past Kipyegon, to be honest. Maybe in the sense that Kipyegon was the last 500 meters that Kipyegon pushed it, because you can see where the times are indicated bold. So at 300 meters to go, Kipyegon hits the front of the race for the first time. She's leading with 200 to go and 100 to go. And then, of course, Chebet passes her. And she'd done enough down the back straight to get far enough ahead of Bicicletti to win that. And as I say, Bicicletti and Kipyegon ran the same time for the last 100. But Chebet is in a class apart. And look, it's difficult because she's also the world record holder. So if you go out and run 250s per kilometer, Chebet's probably the only person in the world who can do that also. So you sacrifice yourself then. So how do you beat someone like that? I don't know, but when you go out at 3:17 and it's become effectively a middle distance race in the 1,500 meter realm, and you don't take that opportunity, that to me is a missed opportunity for Kipyegon.
Sergei was disappointing.
Yeah, just, she was aggressive in the 10. Maybe she said, I got whacked in the 10 doing what I try to do from 1,000 out. Today I'm going to sit and kick. But I mean, she's the fifth best kicker. And I think she gave up in the home straight, actually, because she was way ahead of Houlihan in the with 100 meters to go. And if I just do check that on the final splits, Sergei runs the last 100 meters in 16.3. I mean, she's jogging it.
It's quite frightening. Chebet's only 25 years old. I thought she was a little older than that.
Yeah, so she could pick up a double in the next World Champs and run again in the Olympics and double.
Same age as Bicicletti. So I think those two, because obviously Kipyegon's 6 years older, so she's not going to be a force I would have thought going into Los Angeles.
No, she'd be adding longevity to her list of accomplishments. And I mean, again, it's easy to criticize the tactics and so on and say you should have done something.
It's been a long season. It's been a long season and they're fatigued at that point. And I think it started to show in that race.
Yeah, I think so. The men's 5,000 will probably look similar tomorrow night, actually. So, anyway, it was much hyped. And in the end, didn't really deliver except for Chebet, who got to do exactly what Chebet wants to do. She's the only, and Bicicletti, I think. Those two would have gone into this and saying the perfect race for us would be X, and it was exactly that.
We had entertainment in the men's 800 to finish the night off, didn't we? That was quite the race. So this was the battle of the people who I didn't really recognize, as I was calling it. And it was won, well, it was won by Wanyonyi, as you predicted, but what a way to win it. Because he went off, I think he led pretty much, well, he's leading every split apart from the second, but he went off the front and at the bell, he probably had a meter or so on the rest of the pack. And the only person who was looking like they were going to try and stay with him at that point was Arop.
Yeah. So we've got the splits again. 12:09 for the first 100. Nobody else is faster than 12:03. So Wanyonyi is 2/10 up.
If they go off at 12:09, you know that's going to be a fast race, don't you?
Yeah.
There's intent at that point.
And 11:68 for his second 100. Right now, Arop responds to that. So by 200 meters, you can see this is crazy aggressive because Arop's actually in the lead. Although he never gets in front of Wanyonyi because Wanyonyi gets onto the rail inside of lane 1. Arop's in the outside of 1, inside of 2, and he comes up on Wanyonyi as though he wants to go to the front. And Wanyonyi says, "You shall not pass," and he pretty quickly picks it up again. So by 300 meters, Wanyonyi is now in the front. He runs at 12:39. So we're at 300 meters in 36 seconds. Crazy fast. Like, that's unsustainable. And at the time, I was like, wow, he's going to pay for this.
Yeah.
They go through the bell in 49.26. Arop is in third at that point in the race. Second in that point, sorry, in the race at 49.5. Now, 49.2 is the sort of pace that the pace setter normally does on a Diamond League, and Wanyonyi, Arop, and co would be sitting just off that. So Wanyonyi is now, in effect, the pacemaker. And the question is, what happens in the next part of the race? Because normally you would fade.
Do you think, going back a little bit, do you think his plan was to sit at the front and the pace was, because Arap wanted the front as well, it forced the pace even higher? And his plan was, I'm going to stay at the front. I don't care what you're doing, because it almost looked like, as you said, that it was going to completely undo him in the end. Because as he was coming around then those last few 100 meters, it was, I was convinced that he had nothing left in his legs and he'd blown it by going out so aggressively.
So I think, yes. I saw a quote in which he said afterwards that he'd spoken to David Rudisha, who was in the stadium. They showed him just before the race. And he says, I was inspired by David's London 2012 performance. More on that shortly, stats-wise. And David said to me that if I want to win this race, I have to make it fast and believe in myself and run my race. So I think Wanyonyi said that. And I think... I think he knew, and in a sense, it's smart. You know, it's the anti-women's 5,000 where, like, you know your strength is if it's fast. If you go out at 53 seconds or even 51 and a half, 52, all of a sudden, all those kicking guys, Atui, Sajati, they're in the race more than they are already. And they were, because in the end, Sajati is the guy who comes through to threaten Wanyonyi in the last 50. So I think yes to your question, but I also think yes that Arop, trying to do the same thing, accelerated it and probably pushed it faster than he might have done on his own. Because I can't believe he wants to run a 336.1 and then try and hold the field off for 500 meters. But that's what he does. It's like, it's really astonishing because with, as you mentioned, with 500 gone, he's still in the lead. 600 gone, he's still in the lead. But everyone's queuing up behind him. 700 gone, he's still in the lead. But I think at like 7:20 or so, Arop comes past him. And you think, every race you've ever seen like this, the guy who's in the lead and gets past with 80 to go, he's sliding backwards. But Wanyonyi doesn't slide. He actually responds. It's unbelievable. It's like he comes back from the dead.
Well, you told me not to put too much stock in looking at the way people run and their facial expressions. But Wanyonyi was coming around that last bend onto the home straight. And he looked like last night's Kerry was going to make a reappearance or something, and he was running for the toilet because he had that look of horror on his face that I don't know what I'm doing here. All I know is I've just got to go as hard as I can. And his eyes were bulging. It was just so much effort. And as you say, Arap looked like he was going to have him. And Sajati was coming up like a train on the outside.
Which, as
so
always,
if the race had gone any slower, Sajati would probably have won.
And then if that's true, and I mean, there's always ifs and buts, right? But if that's the case, and I don't disagree, then Wanyonyi did exactly what he needed to do, right? It's a perfect tactical race because he blunted the big strength of someone else. And he, at the same time, played into his own strengths. And I've got this picture. I should have actually found a photo from the front because we said in the context of Jez Hull, we spoke about Wanyonyi, and they produced the best front-on shots because you're right, you can see the whites of his eyes. No one, I don't remember anyone who looks like they're running as scared as he is, because he's great to watch. And you know what he did today? He hits the lead, not always from 100 meters out in, but then he holds everyone off and it looks like they're coming back and he responds. He's done that many, many times. And just to cap up the splits in this race, as I say, he's leading the whole way through, but the field is coming back at him from 6 to 700 meters. There's a lot of guys who are running faster than him. From 700 to 800 meters, Sejati does 12.8, Wanyonyi does 13.26. But you see, by then he's earned the cushion that he doesn't need to have. He's got enough of a lead that fast finish from Sejati isn't going to beat him. But what's really interesting is that Wanyonyi gets slightly faster in the last 100 compared to 6 to 7 and 7 to 8. From 6 to 7. So he actually finds something at the end of what ends up being, and we can talk about the times now, a 1:41.86, which is a championship record. And you were picking up before, like if you go down that list, I mean, it's just this is the best 800-meter race ever run. Well, aside from the fact that it wasn't a world record, everywhere else it's unbelievable.
Well, you've got a championship record for Wanyonyi, season's best, national record, season's best, personal best, national record. And only Masalela of Botswana at the end didn't get any sort of record or personal best. So that's 7 out of the runners.
Although we'll give Masalela something, because that's the fastest 8th place finish ever in an 800. It's the fastest 7th place finish ever in an 800 for Anderson in 1:42.76. So no 800-meter race has ever seen 8 athletes break 1:43, and it happened. So
that's the first time. Wow.
So it's reminiscent of London 2012, right? That was where Rudisha, you may recall, basically ran what is the world record to this day, 140.9, let me be clear. And in that particular race, all 8 broke 1:44. But the time that finished 8th today would have come 5th in that particular race. So Masalela's, as I say, it's world record place positions. So he may not have a symbol next to his name, but he did something today. It's just, it was the most extraordinary 800. And I mean, remember, Paris delivered the same. It was 1/100th there today, and we didn't give you the times. The second place was 400th back, and third was Arop, who was 500th back of second. So the top 3 were within a 10th of a second of one another, actually 900ths of a second, and all running under 1:42. Crazy.
Well, Wanyonyi, he's only 21 years old. You forget that. So he hasn't got the full amount of experience yet. So perhaps that's why he's running without the fear at the moment.
Yeah.
But do you reckon that world record could be on?
Yeah, it has to be. Because he's 21, and I think they said, actually, he was by 2 years the youngest in this race. And I'm just scanning the birth dates on the website now, and that's true. Max Bergen, who was in 6th, I want to say. Yeah, I'm counting correctly. He's the second youngest guy. No, he's not. The Irish fellow who finished 4th with 2 second PB compared to what he came in state. So that's a revelation, actually, because he's 23 years old, 24. Yeah, 23. Turned 23 in June. So that's the young crop. But Wanyonyi now is an Olympic champion, a world champion, world championship record holder. And you have to imagine, and just like we said for McLaughlin Ravoni yesterday, next year's the year where these guys don't have to focus on a championship. And so he can run 4 or 5 Diamond League races and really pick his moments and have a proper crack at that world title, not worrying about having to peak for a gold medal. So I reckon, where else is the world record going to go next for men? I'd say the 800 is the most endangered men's world record at the moment.
Yeah, I can't think of anything sprint-wise. No, you're right.
Yeah. And
tell you what, looking at this,
Wanyonyi, no? So,
Cian McPhillips, that Irish guy who came 4th. The Irish, they might not have had all the medals, but I tell you what, they're getting some depth in athletics at the moment. Joe Warren's going to be over the moon with this.
Yeah, Joe can come on Discourse. Those of you who are Discourse members, Joe's been a guest on the show, I think 3 times. Was a former elite middle distance athlete himself. I've no doubt he knows all these people personally. Joe, tell us why Ireland's doing so well in track and field. Where's the investment going?
Yeah, Corrigan, was it?
Something like Andrew Corcoran in the 15.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they've got some depth and in the women's as well, and we'll get onto that in a moment.
Yeah.
So, anything else on that race?
No, but I think now, looking back, that's the race of the championships, men or women, in terms of quality.
Well, I don't know. I think the women's 400 with Pauline Ewer.
Yeah, close. But the thing is, that's the top two. This is everyone.
Yeah.
It's crazy
okay.
deep.
Distance races are slightly different, aren't they?
Yeah, it's a hard comparison. But okay, let's say unequivocally top men's race so far.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Okay. So we had some field events today, and we had the mixed field events in the heptathlon for the women going on, which was won by Anna Hall with the gold medal there. Kate O'Connor of Ireland. There he is, Arcee. A good link there. Second with a national record. And we actually had a shared bronze, which was really unusual.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because Katarina Johnson-Thompson and Talia Brooks of the US, they ended up on the same points because Johnson-Thompson pulled back a 6-second deficit in the 800 meters. So what are the chances of that? It's somebody mathematical work it out for me because I've never seen that.
I've never seen that. And like, so here's another, we spoke about the relays, the heptathlon and the decathlon, which finishes tomorrow for the men, is like objectively one of the most impressive. I think they're the best athletes in the world because of the range of things they have to do at a very high level. But the problem is it plays out so slowly and so uncertainly that it's very difficult to follow and appreciate what they are doing. And so like they'll start the 800-meter race today, and Hall is so far ahead that she has to basically fall down, and she probably still win gold. So the second place is gone, right? But the third, fourth is really interesting because you've got Johnson-Thompson and I think Brooks, right, from the USA. But now Brooks is ahead of Johnson-Thompson by what they work out is about 5.96 seconds. So that's what you're looking for. But it's quite hard to find that race within a race and then appreciate what's happening when everything else in the sport is who finishes first, who clears the... So something is lost in the magic of the heptathlon because the way it's covered over 2 days. And I can't help thinking what you really need is a creative director to turn the heptathlon into a documentary that is shown in a 1-hour window instead of a 2-day long window where you sort of see, and I get that this is really hard, but you know, like you'll have a shot put event, then you'll have a 200, you'll have the disc or the javelin rather, then long jump and so on, and it all culminates in this 800-meter race, and it's just not compelling viewing, even though it's objectively remarkable.
100% agree, because we've talked about the field events sort of being filler between the main events, and this is the filler for the filler. It feels like that's the heptathlon, the decathlon. It's when you've got nothing else to go to, we'll go to the shop in the decathlon sort of thing.
Yeah, and
so you never get to feel like you know the competitors.
Yes, exactly.
You see so little of them.
Exactly, and so I just feel like someone who's really good at editing this, and it needs to. But the problem is then you wouldn't be broadcasting it live, and there'd be a disconnect between the live coverage and what's shown on the television. But more people are consuming it on TV, and I just think. You could probably, and it doesn't do justice to all the athletes, and you don't know the storyline till after the fact, right? Who's picking a tie for third based on a 5.9 second differential in the 800? So the documentary that came out like in a week's time would be great viewing, but you know the results. So I remember sport's called an instantly perishable product, so it dies the moment the result is known, or devalues rather. But you got to do something to make these athletes get more credit and more recognition and worthiness than they get currently.
Perhaps there's too many people in it, because I was looking at the decathlon here, there's 24 altogether. And I know you've got to give everybody a chance sort of thing in quality, but it feels like too many people to have two heats. Have qualifiers beforehand and have a dozen perhaps, even 8.
Maybe. I mean, anyway, it's a shame. Because Anna Hall wins this, I think 6.888 pretty comfortably. She wins the 800 at the end, so it's got a certain satisfaction that the best athlete also wins the last event. I mean, you know, in the Olympic pentathlon, which is the basically military sports, that's done what they do a stagger at the end. So in the end, whoever finishes the race first is the winner. Now that wouldn't work, right? Because you'd have to basically get these athletes to go off at 1/10 of a second increments. And Katrina Johnson, but imagine that happens, right? And Johnson-Thompson's going off 5.9 seconds behind Brooks, and now it's a race to the line. That's a more interesting hook for audience members than what happened. But it's just a pity because they deserve more than the dilution over time and depth than is currently given to them.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember we mentioned Simon Ehammer?
Yeah.
The other day.
Where's he going?
He's not going very well because he didn't get a jump off in the high jump. So he didn't get any points. No point. No point.
So he stopped.
So, well, he's just not competitive anymore. So that's pretty harsh in these events, isn't it?
Yeah. Remember that was
things
the
like the high jump.
Who was the famous athlete? Was it Dan O'Brien or Daley Thompson with the pole vault in the men's? That's normally the pole vault does for them, not the high jump. But yeah, anytime you can't register a mark, I mean, they normally just stop, right? I'm surprised Eham is continuing.
Possibly, I don't know. He might have stopped. He might just give it all up overnight. Just go down
Anyway,
the pub.
that result will be brought to you tomorrow.
So we also had a couple of other field events. The women's shot, and it was won by a Schilder of the Netherlands. She pulled off a final throw of 2029 to take gold and deny Chase Jackson of the US. While Madison Lee Vesh of New Zealand, she'd actually led until that last round with the only throw over 20 meters, and then she got overtaken twice in the last round to end up with a bronze. So you got a feel for her there.
Yeah.
And then in the
on that, New Zealand, obviously, Valerie Adams was their legendary shot putter, but a nation also with quite amazing shot put heritage. The other day we spoke about some of the most impressive training you will ever see as a shot put athlete doing strength and power work. And I mentioned they had a guy called Jack O'Gill. They also had Tom Walsh, then Valerie Adams, and now this is their latest shot put sensation or world-class shot putter. So that's pretty interesting that an island of 1 or 2 million people would produce such a high density of shot put athletes. Because the US, okay, we've already decided good at spinning around and throwing things. But for New Zealand to be in that conversation quite often is quite something, actually. Interesting one.
They're another country, another smallish country having a good championship, aren't they? You've had a few good results in this one.
We're planning a recap show later next week, and we'll have our winners and losers by country. Because, they're definitely on the winner list. There's a few others that have been significant losers on the medal table anyways. That's the shot put for women.
Women's javelin. How do you fancy another surprise winner? Because Julesy Angulo, she's a surprise winner. She came into the event ranked 33rd in the world from Venezuela, and she was the only thrower over 65 meters. And she smashed her PB by 1.97 meters. So that's a rather wide margin. So I'm imagining the doping controllers will be knocking on her door tomorrow. But cynical, but true.
I wondered whether... So that's the other one here was our South African, who was formerly Joanne van Dijk, is now Joanne Duplessis, was leading this after 2 rounds, or second at least. Looked like our first shot at a medal and then fell away and finished 4th. So that's pretty harsh for us. But I was wondering... with the humidity and the conditions, and I forgot to bring it up with the men's javelin, I wonder whether that really affects conditions. Like, does your grip on the javelin get affected on wet, humid evenings, and whether athletes from places that are more accustomed to that do better than they would in the cooler, drier European... I don't know enough about the sport to know, but javelin seems to throw up a lot of surprises. Maybe it's just the interaction of technicality and power, and so much can change to cost you 2 meters and suddenly you're 5th when you might have been 1st.
Yeah, did I say Venezuela then? It was Ecuador. Ecuador got the medal there, but silver went to Annette Siatina from Latvia, and Mackenzie Little from Australia got her 2nd bronze in a row in World Championships. And yes, South Africa missed out on a medal again. You've got none yet.
And like we thought maybe the 4x100 relays, I'm teeing your segue up here. The men's 4x1 relay was the silver medalist in Paris, and they was like, oh, yeah, we'll get that one. But hope does not die until the 4x400 men's is finished, because we've qualified, I think, second fastest, right? We certainly won our heat.
Well, there's a reason why you're not going any further into the final of the men's 4x100, because South Africa claimed that they were impeded by the arse of Marcel Jacobs in the lane next to them. And it does look like Jacob sticks his butt out over the line, and the South African runner goes straight into him while trying to exchange the baton. But you were telling me that the appeal has failed, right?
Well, the official results, I downloaded these just before we came on. So unless it's like a Rai Benjamin situation where it takes like an hour 45, but even then they would have done it, right? Like by now you'd know. But yes, the official results have the Italians registering a time. So they didn't get disqualified for impeding, whatever. And South Africa are still listed as DNF. So it would appear not, unless something's changing overnight. But I don't think it is. And this is where, this is where my frustration with watching the 4x1 is, because it is so chaotic. There's so much happening at such high speed that I spend most of the race watching backwards, because every changeover I'm looking to see who's walking. Or who's got their hands in the air in anguish. And today it happened a great deal. It was ridiculous how poor the technical execution was. So I don't know, like in my mind I'm thinking, because the key with a relay is obviously the person going off has to time it, both in timing and speed, so that the person coming in, and they've got to run. If you imagine a graph of the incoming athlete's speed and the outgoing athlete's speed, they've got to eventually go exactly the same speed at the moment the baton changes hands. So you should be able to track the unit speed. And I could almost imagine a really cool graphic would be to track the speed of the baton for each team and to show who's dropped off and who's stayed the most consistent. Now, when I'm watching the 400s, for instance, and they're showing me that Sydney McLaughlin-Ravoni is ahead at 280 meters, they've obviously got tech to know where they are on the track. And if you know that, then you should be able to work out the speed. So it feels like technological innovation could unlock part of the viewing experience, even if you show it in the replay. And so we'll give Keishane Thompson. You could see with a naked eye, he went way too early. And then the same thing happened for the British anchor leg, so early. And you could see that he was going the same speed as the incoming runner, and they were still 10 meters apart. It's going to end badly. And that would be pretty cool to show insight in what's happening in a relay, I think.
Because in the first heat, just to clarify that Jamaica are out of the men's 4x100 because of a messed up handover. I do think it was Thompson, because I saw that Oblique Seville was getting the blame for that one.
Well, he ran the second leg down the back. So it was Keishane Thompson was the anchor leg, and a guy called Ford was coming in around the top bend. So from 2 to 3. So no, Thompson is Seville's innocent of any charge.
Is innocent. Oh, that was the headline on the BBC News, I think it was.
They've blamed the wrong guy.
Great Britain did their usual mess up, and the commentators were going mental about that one, because they said they spend all these money on specialised coaches so they get this right, and then they never get it right in the finals.
Yeah, there's a slow motion shot from the front of their handover, and you can see the anguish on the incoming runner when he realizes what the outgoing guy's done. And it's the outgoing guy. Like the incoming guy, remember in a 100 meter race, you're slowing down in the last 30 meters. That guy is fatiguing. And he's hit his top speed when he's 40 meters away from you, but he's not holding that. And so if you have to be sympathetic to the incoming guy. And especially when you are Great Britain or Jamaica, and you can win it with 85% proficiency in the heats. Yes, in the final you've got to be better, but you can qualify with clunky changeovers. But you can't qualify when your outgoing guy dusts the incoming guy by about 5 meters. It's so, I don't understand why it's such a problem to solve.
If you're the outgoing guy, it's got to be pretty nerve-wracking, though, because especially if you see other people going alongside you, and all your instincts are telling you to start moving. So
yeah, it's the pressure, right? And that's the problem. Like, you can invest all you want in coaching and so on, but
until you're in the
So how do you recreate? How do you recreate the pressure situation where you can't hear? Maybe one of the things, a cue that these sprinters need is to hear the foot strikes of an incoming runner to judge the pace. And they don't have that because now it's too noisy and so on. I remember Eddie Jones and rugby coaches teaching rugby players how to catch high balls in training by belting them with fire hoses and trying to tackle them and so on. You have to simulate. I don't know, maybe they're not simulating it right. Maybe they need to spend some time with technical coaches who do that sort of thing more often, because they just, I genuinely think the 4x100 relay medal is a medal ripe for winning. Because every time, you go back last year, South Africa silver, every World Championships, there's a surprise 4x100 relay team because one of the big three screw it up and one of the lesser 10 doesn't. So I actually think it's quite a soft medal to win.
Did you know that going off track a bit about training techniques for dealing with pressure, that the European Ryder Cup team, they're training with VR headsets which feed loads of abuse into their ears at close range, as if they were actually competing in the Ryder Cup with the American crowds, and that's how they're learning to deal with just to block it out.
I did not know that, but that's the sort of innovation that I appreciate. I don't know if it's very valid, but maybe it is. I don't know. Like, anyway, it's just it's a never.
It's probably cheaper than hiring 100 Americans to shout at you from close range. So, anyway, yeah. The other thing about the men's 400 4x400, the US men, they had a bad handover and they finished 6th, so they're not in the final there. But apart from that, I think the rest of the qualifying was pretty much as expected. The women's 4x400 team didn't contain Sydney McLaughlin-Lerone. So I wonder if she's going to make a star appearance in the final.
Surely. Do they need her, though?
Probably not.
I mean, like they were close to Jamaica in the heats, and I'm not sure where but you just get the impression that they could win it by half a second without her, and by 1.5, 2 seconds with her. So and I wonder actually, it'd be interesting to know what the discussions are around that. Like, who makes the request? Sydney, will you please grace us with your with your 47.5 second relay split?
In the 100 meters, Sha'Carri Richardson was running the anchor leg, whereas I thought it might be Jefferson Wooden. But I then it occurred to me that the people running the first and last legs, their changeovers, they only have to do sort of like half a changeover. They're the hand it off or receive. So perhaps if you've got people who are weaker at that side of it, you don't want Sha'Carri Richardson handing it off if she's not very good at that.
Yeah, and you can use the the relay changeover zone, right? Because it's like I'm going to get the distance wrong, but there's a distance either side of your mark, and if you go to the front end of that mark and you hand over to your third athlete at the back end of the mark, the person running down the back straight can run 110, 115 meters. And so if you've got someone in that, and that's why Bolt used to often do that for Jamaica, and Powell used to run the anchor leg.
Aren't you going to get pulled up on this one again on Discourse? Because it's not a fallacy.
No, it's not, because that where you position yourself relative to those zones allows you to manipulate. Because in theory, if everyone does equal things, then it's 100 meters. But if you move to the front of that zone, you can.
But you've got to get a run up. There's no point in being right at the front.
Yeah, but you could start your run, and this is where you might have to start inside that zone. But you can play with the distance and find 0.05 of a second or 1/10 of a second by extending that and having less. Your slower athletes, in theory, running the bends and so on. So normally they'll have a fastest starter. So that's why Coleman would start for the US men's team, because his 60 meters starts supposedly the best. You want third to be a good bend runner. Like if I was Jamaica, I'd put Brian Lavelle on the bend in the final. Okay, the final they didn't qualify for, but I would have. Because he had an outrageous bend. I mean, like he ran a 10. Actually, we didn't mention this yesterday. He ran like a 10:06 or something in the 200 meters around the bend. It's unbelievably fast. Anyway.
Yeah, he just couldn't hang on.
Yeah. So anyway, so we've sort of jumped around the relays a little bit. I think the 4x4, if Botswana can't win that with 3 men in the individual final, it'd be crazy. South Africa has a chance of a medal there. US didn't even get close. Women will be a good race. If McLaughlin Ravone runs, then I think it's all over. But the 4x1s are chaotic. I mean, Ghana was the fastest qualifier.
But we've said the qualifiers, do they mean a lot? People ease off. I suppose you can't really ease off, can you, in there? I think the first 3 legs, you've got to hammer it.
Yeah, I think Sha'Carri Richardson ran the anchor leg at like 90% for the US women.
Yeah, she was easy enough.
They looked really good.
They looked very good.
I'd be surprised if they... But again, like, it takes one technical mistake. You miss the hand, you get your timing wrong. And we've said actually a few things now about how can't believe it goes wrong. But actually, there's quite a lot that can go wrong and often does. So someone will screw up the final as well in each of those races.
Mm-hmm. So final day tomorrow. We got the big race up first. Well, it's a big race as far as Great Britain's concerned, with the women's 800 metres, which will be, I think, Britain's probably last chance to win a gold medal tomorrow. Because Keely Hodgkinson, I think she's the nailed-on favourite. And you think she can win in any number of ways, don't you?
Yeah, I think she's the fastest 400 athlete. She's got the ability to run the last 500 if she has to. She could probably offer fastest pace to 500, finish the last 300. But I think for safety and for risk management, she'd want to run it fairly hard. It's pretty clear there's about 3 or 4 women who can run a 155, 156. There's only one who can run a 154, so why would you invite them into it at a 157? You know what I mean? Like, it's just and she can do it. So the way she won her semi-final, to me, is the template. She'll go to the front. She'll run it like Wanyonyi, except not at 55 seconds through the bell. I reckon steady, building, last 300, ramp it up, and she wins it by 6 meters, half a second or more, I think.
Who would you say her biggest challenger is? Mora?
Yeah, Wero, I don't know whether it was in the semis that she knew she was going to make it and she eased off a little bit, but she seemed a little bit tight in the last 80. You know, she had that sort of heavy-legged look that we saw a little bit from Jess Hull in the races before. So I don't know whether she raced a lot in August leading up to these World Championships. The woman who won that semi. Do you have the 800 semi results in front of you?
No, was it Vero?
No, she was second in her semi-final. But it was interesting because they both semis. The one Hodgkinson won, and the one that Wera ran in but didn't win. And I'm going to find out who won that in a moment for you.
Looking as well.
They went through the bell in more or less the same time, and that second semi-final ended up being quite fast. So I do think that there will be some pressure, but Hodgkinson's just, when you're a second and a half, whatever it is, faster than the rest of the field, it's difficult to see how you lose it unless you get caught up in something. So I think there's more interest in what happens behind than at the front, because I think there's some pretty interesting, Mary Mora ran a 1:58. She's the one who won the first semi-final, actually. That's who.
Yes. It was Sarah Mora, but
no,
Kiwi Hodgkinson won her semi.
It was Lillian Odera of Kenya. She ran a 1:56.8 in the seconds. And so there's 3 semis. So that's why I've confused matters for us. Audrey Wera was second in the semi. Lillian Odera of Kenya was the first the winner of that semi-final. And they all look pretty good. So I reckon between Hunter Bell, Odera, Wera, and Mary Mora, there will be a big fight behind. But Hodgkinson is...
So,
it's hard to
for
see.
For God's sake, Keely, take it out fast.
Yeah, that's what I would do. I'd want to run 55.5, 56 for the first lap. And then it is like Wanyonyi, because you've basically made it a Diamond League race for everyone else, and you know what they can do. Because in the Diamond League, they'll run a 56.59 and they'll run 1:55. You can do that. You can run a 1:54.5 off that. So why would you not do it? So I fully expect that she'll do exactly the thing that she did in the semi and win it.
Mm-hmm. The other big race of the day is the men's 5K.
I don't have a clue who's going to win that. Hocker.
Well, we said that yesterday. We think Hocker. I was having a look on the start list, and his name really does jump out. Ingebrigtsen, I don't think, has got any form at all.
Mm-mm.
You've got Grant Fisher. How about Jimmy? Grecia?
Maybe, but it's interesting. Like, who's gonna set this up fast? How many Ethiopians in that final? Not enough.
2.
And they won't work together, because it's Gebriwet, I think, looked good in the semi-final. The other Ethiopian is the youngster Behiru, who's like a teenager still, I think. And I don't know. They just don't seem. The Ethiopians seem really good in May and June. They don't seem to be good towards the end of the season. So I don't think they'll be a factor.
Why Ethiopians? Why are you choosing Ethiopians in that sense of taking it out?
Because they've always been like in the 5,000, like running world leads and winning Diamond League races. They've got a handful of guys who can all run 12:50-ish. But, so if you've got guys who can run 12:50 like Gebriwet, will they try and do that? I don't know. I don't think so. Not in those conditions, not with the risk and so on. So I can see this one dawdling along for 2Ks, much like the women's race did.
Which suits Hocker.
Yeah, and Grecia, because, look, in the 10,000 it was the same thing, right? Now you've got a flat-out sprint, and Grecia outkicked everyone. So he comes into the equation. And look, he's not a slow 5,000 meter guy either. So maybe, but I just genuinely don't know. It feels extremely unpredictable in the absence of the big names like Ingebrigtsen. Maybe Fisher can be aggressive. They just haven't looked good.
No, he's got the world lead, Fisher.
Indoors.
Nico Young's got 3rd, but I don't think it means anything in the case of these championships, to be honest with you.
And they're so long ago. Like, those times are from May.
Yeah, February. No one.
Yeah, Fisher's was an indoor performance in Boston, right? Remember that? And that's that bouncy Boston hardboard. So I don't know. I just couldn't pick it. But if it's slow, and if Hocker doesn't find himself swamped with 400 to go like he has in the 15, I could see him winning this.
Well, I can't see anybody else on there. Let's be honest. Yes. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Very
and then we kick it off with the end with the relays, and that's our job done.
Yeah. Botswana men's 4, USA women's 4, USA women's 4x1, and men's 4x1 Canada. I don't know. Who do you pick?
I can't really look. It's exactly the same. I think the US all the ones they enter or they've got through to. I just think it's a shame that South Africa aren't going to win a medal.
That 4 by
Um,
4 could. There's a chance. I'm telling you, there's a chance.
I'm just looking to see if you're in any of the field events, because field events we got tomorrow. Women's shot put.
No, that was today. We discussed that one.
Oh yeah, sorry. We got women's high jump.
Yeah, no one from South Africa.
No,
That should be good actually. Ola Slagers and
that
Mahuchik. That'll be a good one.
yeah, actually, I'd forgotten to mention that.
Mm.
So what else we got? Decathlon tomorrow.
I'm saying South Africa wins the 4 by 4 medal. It won't be gold because Botswana are literally a second better per leg, but I think we could get a bronze.
Hmm. No, you haven't got anybody in the men's discus either, I'm afraid.
No, haven't for years.
It's all right. Wales haven't won anything either, so don't worry.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in the recap. Okay, that's it then. Last day tomorrow. Thanks very much everyone for listening. We'll be, as always, wrapping up tomorrow's action. Hopefully our picks come good and we haven't jinxed Keely Hodgkinson.
No, we won't.
Nah,
Nailed on.
Some things are too powerful to even jinx. Yeah, that's it, folks. The link to Discourse is in the show notes if you've enjoyed these and you want to show some support or just chat about sport and sports science with other listeners. That's how you do it. Make a monthly pledge and you can be a Discourse member. We will speak to all of you again, though, tomorrow. For now, goodbye.